Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we look back on an awesome year for movies, which is every year. And in our first season, we are looking at the movies of 1994. I'm Josh Bell, film critic for various places online and in Las Vegas. And joining me is...
I'm Jason Harris, comedian, filmmaker, social butterfly.
So true. Really, you are. And of course, we're here with our amazing producer, David Rosen, creator and host of the Piecing It Together podcast as well.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Josh, This is an awesome movie year, but this movie today, not many people thought was awesome.
No, but this movie is maybe awesomely terrible. We are talking about the biggest failure of 1994. Biggest flop. And it is not only a box office flop, but as you were saying, a critical flop, audience flop, Rob Reiner's North.
Woo!
Yes. Flop-wise, this movie made $7 million in North America on a budget of $40 million. Which is obviously not good. Although really...
Doesn't sound that bad.
Yeah, compared to other flops, I feel like there's definitely bigger boondoggles. It was also nominated for 6 awards at the Razzies, including Worst Picture, Worst Actor for Bruce Willis, Worst Supporting Actor for Dan Aykroyd, Worst Supporting Actress for Kathy Bates, Worst Director for Rob Reiner, and Worst Screenplay. But it didn't win any of those.
Can I just, and after watching it, I mean, Bruce Willis wasn't bad in it. He was fine. He was just straight down the middle.
Yeah.
And Kathy Bates didn't even have enough to do to be, I didn't think she was bad either. Those are a little unfair Razzies.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think the Razzies, and this is a whole separate issue, but the Razzies just will pick on certain movies and nominate them for every category, even if it doesn't justify, just because they've decided this movie is like the worst.
Yeah, I'm fine with the Dan Aykroyd nomination.
Yeah.
he likes to go big in this one. They should have given it to Reba, his wife, in this.
Well, yeah, and I think really you can blame Rob Reiner in large part for the way these performances came off, because he's steering the ship and telling those people what to do.
And I think that's probably why this is one of the reasons it's considered such a flop, because in a way this is a fable and Rob Reiner hit it out of the park with Princess Bride.
Yeah, of course. He's coming off an amazing run.
Yeah.
Going into this movie of Princess Bride and Spinal Tap and
Few Good Men.
Not
a fable.
But just classic films. When Harry Met Sally. I mean, he was a massive, important director at the time of this film.
Yeah, I mean, and not everything can be like, dude, those are what, like 4 masterpieces in a row?
Right.
How can you're gonna miss once in a while.
So. Yeah. But this was a massive miss. And looking at reviews, I think, honestly, possibly the most famous thing about this movie is the review that Roger Ebert wrote, who said... I hated this movie. Hated this movie. Hated it. Hated every simpering, stupid, vacant, audience-insulting moment of it. Hated the sensibility that thought anyone would like it. Hated the implied insult to the audience by its belief that anyone would be entertained by it. And there's a lot more to this review, but he goes to town on this movie in a way that he rarely ever does.
Yeah, but Rob Reiner had the ultimate comeback for it. Do you remember this on the roast?
No.
I think it was probably the roast for Rob Reiner, but it was some roast, and I think Michael McKean had brought up this review, and he quoted the hated everything about it. And Rob Reiner said, "See, when you read between the lines, it's not that bad."
Yeah. And it was interesting looking because, of course, that review is so famous. And Siskel and Ebert gave this movie 2 thumbs down, of course. But looking for other reviews that came out at the time.
Wait, just real fast. That review is so famous. He wrote a book.
Yes.
About movies.
I hated this movie. Yes. And again, I feel like people know that more than they know this movie. But, for the sake of balance, Mick LaSalle in the San Francisco Chronicle said, North is director Rob Reiner's first flat-out failure. A sincerely wrought, energetically made picture that all the same crashes on takeoff. It's strange and oddly distasteful at its best, managing to be bad in some original and unexpected ways. He was kind of generous.
I think that's fair, man. He took swings and he missed, but like the intentions were there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Rita Kempley in the Washington Post called it 88 of the most painful minutes in movie history. Mean-spirited and incredibly stupid.
Did you find any good reviews on it?
There was one contemporary review. I just looking through Rotten Tomatoes that had a positive, but I wasn't able to get the full text, so I wasn't able to quote
Dave,
it.
can you look up best review of North?
Well, I don't know about best, but I was actually just doing that. I was looking up reviews, and the first review that comes up on IMDb is just a user. Says, why does everyone slam this movie? What were the critics expecting? Oscar-worthy stuff? Which,
and I mean, I think people probably were expecting that because of Rob Reiner's track record.
I guess so. I mean, he's just built so much, and he's Hollywood royalty because of his dad and also, his own career.
Well, yeah, I mean, right? Even forget about his dad. Like you were saying, like, look at that list of movies that he made leading up to this.
Well, and you're thinking like, okay, he came out all in the family, and like, what I'm saying with his dad is he's got a 50-year legacy that he's building on and everything like that. So, but I mean, and especially because this is, it's based on the comic writer Alan Zweibel's book, North, the tale of a 9-year-old boy who becomes a free agent and travels the world in search of the perfect parents. So it is this fable, and he's just like, who better to direct a modern fable than Rob Reiner?
Right. And
Princess Bride.
You could argue that The Princess Bride is a light, is not a movie that would be expected to win Oscars, but that's a movie that people like that stood the test of time, and that even as it came out, people love and considered a great movie, not just like a fun throwaway thing for kids.
And having watched it recently, it's an awesome movie.
Yeah. So I don't think it was unreasonable for people to expect something great out of this movie.
I mean, the premise is interesting. A kid divorces his parents and goes around the world trying to find, the right parents for him. You could really like build some comedy in there, and maybe it shouldn't have been a PG movie. Maybe it needed to be a hard R and like a little more Good Son-ish or something like
right.
that.
Well, yeah, I think part of the problem with this movie is that it doesn't know kind of who its target audience is or what tone to strike. And so we can get into what we thought of it, but I want to know. We mentioned in our Lion King episode, you watching with your daughter Scarlett and her dancing around, and you attempted to watch this movie with her as well, right?
Yeah, she shut this one off pretty quickly. So even the 5-year-old hated it, but she just said she didn't like it. But she didn't like it. I remember watching this again, not in the theater, but on video very quickly after. And in my teenage years, I remember liking the movie and never understanding like what everyone's problem was with it. And I had probably watched it more than once as a teenager, and I thought it was fun and zippy, and I liked the different set pieces. And, I mean, like, if I'm going to give this credit for anything now, I like the fact that like he built environments into like old Hollywood sets. Everything looks very fake, and that's kind of fun. But yeah, I disagree with teenage me on the film now. But yeah, that was the first time I had seen it. So.
Okay, yeah, I never saw it until just recently to prepare for this podcast. So, but I was a devoted Siskel and Ebert viewer, so I may have seen their review of it. I'm not sure, but I definitely, like I was saying, for a lot of people who know that review more than they know the movie, I definitely was very aware of that and only vaguely aware of what the movie itself was before seeing it.
Yeah, it is one of the most famous reviews of all time.
Yes, it really is. And I did, weirdly, like we're talking. So at the time, the expectations of people were high, right? Rob Reiner is this incredibly well-regarded director. He's made these amazing films.
Tons of famous actors.
Right. And so people have these very high expectations. Of course, now seeing it for the first time in 2019, the expectations are as low as they possibly can be.
Yeah.
You expect it to be this horrible, horrible, horrible movie.
It's not.
And it's not a good movie. It's definitely not a good movie. But we will talk more about that and our general thoughts on North when we come back. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. On this episode of our season about the movies of 1994, we're taking a look at the biggest flop of the year, Rob Reiner's North.
It's not the movie that deserved this like death pounding.
Right. I probably not. I definitely don't think it is the worst movie or one of the worst movies ever made. I wouldn't even say that I hated it. It is extraordinarily misguided. I think that was the main impression that I got, that you can see what they were going for and they just missed the mark every step of the way.
I think that's a fair assessment. And for those who haven't seen it, North, played by Elijah Wood, who's good, even as a kid actor here. You know?
Yeah,
so
although North
good.
is a horrible character. He's such a dick.
Well, there's way worse characters than that. We'll get it.
Yeah, that's true. But he's supposed to be the sweet, nice protagonist. And I just hated him.
I want to know why in a minute, but basically he divorces his parents, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Jason Alexander, you know?
Yes.
So, in the middle of the Seinfeld run. And they go into like a catatonic state because they're so shocked. So North goes around the country and he goes to Texas and where he goes to this rich couple's house, which is Dan Aykroyd and Reba McEntire. Then he goes to Hawaii where he's going to be the governor's kid. Then he goes to Alaska and that seems like a nice family until they send Grandpa out to sea to go die, played by Abe Vigoda. And then finally then there's a montage of quick hitters where he's going different places. And finally he finds the perfect family in upstate New York, played by John Ritter, Faith Ford, and who played the daughter,
young Scarlett Johansson, her first role. Also in this movie, young Jussie Smollett.
Yes, who played the kind of heavy, like bodyguard, kid turned who
informant who squeals on his boss to North. Yes.
Yeah. So comic relief from Jon Lovitz, playing the slimy Jon Lovitz lawyer type. And of course, in the end, North realizes. And then Bruce Willis, who, is in every sequence as like kind of the soothsayer of like,
he's sort of this mystical presence who shows up wherever North is as a different person to give him advice.
Yeah. So that's the basic premise. Of course, North goes back to his original parents, who in that first scene, like they suck as parents,
I mean, they're not like, yes, that first scene shows them being very self-absorbed, but I think from the start, North himself is easily as self-absorbed as his parents.
Now, why do you hate North so much?
Because, okay, so North tells you all about how great he is from the start. He's the star of the school play. He gets these amazing grades. He's a star athlete on the baseball team. He's a smug little dude, North. And he's mad that his parents are not paying close attention to him at all times and instead are, concerned with their own careers, which seems stressful. Jason Alexander has to test pants, which was my favorite part of the whole movie. He's number 6 inspector of pants.
Yeah.
He takes a very drastic response to his like slightly neglectful parents who really don't treat him that poorly. They seem to provide him with everything he could possibly need, financially and comfort wise. He's got a nice house. They're serving him food. They send him to a nice school. And, he's ungrateful, North, I think. And then he goes to all these other parents and he treats them like, oh, well, what can you offer me? I didn't sympathize with him at all.
Well, he's in the driver's seat here, Josh.
Yeah.
When you're a talent like North, you're playing Tevye, you're the star pitcher, you're getting the good grades. You can call your shot. Every other parent in the neighborhood, as they point out in the film, use North as an example of how good a kid could be, right?
Right.
So,
but they don't point that out in the film. North himself points it out. And how great he is and how everyone says he's so great. And why can't his parents just fawn over him all the time like everyone else?
Well, if you're a free agent in sports or anything else, you're going to be looking for the best deal. So when he goes to these different places, he wants to see why, that would be the right fit for him. I can't blame him on that, given the circumstances that led him there.
Yeah, no, I just felt like from the start, I was soured on the idea of caring about this kid and what he's doing with his life.
Yeah, some things are better in print as like kind of a satirical piece,
right,
don't translate over to
news. And this might have been, I haven't read, I don't know if anyone, it was not a book that was a big sensation or anything. I certainly haven't read it. And then not only is North I feel like, unlikable. But then we have the sort of villains of the piece. His friend Winchell, who is horribly annoying.
And he comes from like this. I agree with you. He's like a 1940s newspaper man.
And then he turns into this weird, like, evil tycoon character.
Yeah, like he's a Citizen Kane type or something, right? And so he's already like 5 decades behind. And then even rewatching it when he's going to the different North's going around to the different parents, I'm like, whatever. It's all right. It's not the worst thing in the world. But Act 3 goes totally off the rails with Winchell putting a hit out on his best friend. How crazy does that sound, Dave? An 11-year-old putting a hit out on another 11-year-old.
Yeah, that sounds like the early 90s to me.
Yeah.
And the reason he did it is because he's now power grabbed so much, and like he's so powerful, he's gonna make this shitty lawyer Jon Lovitz president, and he's gonna control all these kids, like going over to different parents now. And
he's going to be like the ruler of the world.
Yeah, he's
something.
That's basically, he said he's more powerful than the president.
Yeah, it goes so...
That character is just not a good character.
No. And I mean, I do think, and you said this a little bit, that this points to a version of this movie that could have just been completely like surreal and dark and weird. It made me think of another kid movie from the 90s, Matilda, which I don't know if you've seen that, that's based on a Roald Dahl novel, who isn't afraid to go, even though that movie is for kids, to go like dark and twisted. And I think it succeeds much better at that kind of thing.
I think you needed that because the premise that kids rule the world, like that's a fun premise. You could make that work and everything. But this definitely is not that. So.
No. I mean, it doesn't work. And when it takes it into that darker territory with North running around while he's being shot at by some henchmen, you wonder, who is this movie for, and what are they trying to do here with this movie?
I agree with all of that. Now, did you like anything in this movie?
I liked the opening credits. And that sounds silly, but yeah, they have a nice little, like, a sort of a montage of like toys and knickknacks that represent what's later to come.
Right, the different places that he's going to throughout.
Yeah. I thought that was clever, and it felt like the tone, which obviously they wanted to be like a fable. It felt like it was setting that proper tone for what should be to come. It draws you in the right way, but then it immediately undermines that, I think, with the way North acts and his interactions with his friend Winchell. So yeah, it was all downhill from the opening credits.
Well, to me, the first place it goes completely haywire and like you're like, what is happening here? Is so the first family that North visits is Dan Aykroyd and Reba McEntire, both somehow trying to outbig each other in performance in this one, as like two Texas billionaires whose son died, right? Which is a very strange thing to put in a kid's movie.
And he died because they like overfed him.
Right. So that's the premise of this first thing. So Dan Aykroyd gives North the Houston Astros. That's how rich he is. He just owns it.
Yeah.
I sign over the Houston Astros to you now.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's how he kind of talked. And he, they're all shiny clothes, cowboy, it's like a halftime show type thing. And they basically decide that they want to keep feeding North to be a fat boy like Buck, I think his name was.
I don't remember.
And when North finds this out, like, he's like, huh? And then Dan Aykroyd and Reba McEntire go into a musical number about making North fat, that it's like, what the hell is happening here? It's like, it just comes completely out of nowhere. And that is not a good musical
number. And furthermore, there are no more musical numbers in this movie.
Which is probably a good thing.
Well, it is a good thing. But again, it's like so incongruous. And all of those things that you're describing, I think if they were pushed into the realm of complete surreality or absurdity or had any level of self-awareness to them, could have worked in a way. I mean, I don't know if Rob Reiner is the right director to make that kind of movie. If Terry Gilliam had directed this movie, it might have worked in a weird kind of way.
Well, I mean, Spinal Tap was subversive and like really nailed like this kind of like underbelly of humor.
Yeah, but Spinal Tap is not surreal or dark or weird in any way.
Yeah.
Let's talk about every family that he visits in this movie is a horrible, often offensive stereotype.
I agree with you on that, except for John Ritter. And I mean, even that is a stereotype of like a quintessential white suburban family, right?
So he visits all of the ethnic families.
Well, he visited a white family first.
That's true. Which are terrible stereotypes of like Southerners and Texans.
And his real parents are in that first scene are horrible stereotypes of like Jews.
Yes, that is true. And it's only the nice suburban white bread like Christian family, the Leave It to Beaver style family that embraces him and treats him well.
Right. And then at the end, his stereotypical Jew parents, and I say Jew as a Jew, become far less Jewy. Have you noticed that? Like when he comes back, he's like, no, the first scene, it's like, you told me I'm going to do this. Right. And then in the last scene, it's just like, North, we missed you. I'm glad you're home. Like very common.
Yeah. And again, we were talking in our Clerks episode about, what's acceptable. And we look at this as the movie that came out, at the time was this, something that was generally regarded as okay, that maybe we look back at it now and we think, well, that's a little uncomfortable. But I think even in 1994, you look at the stereotypes and the almost racist depiction of certain people in this movie, and it was not okay then either.
Which did you find to be the most racist?
I mean, I feel like that montage maybe where they just have to give you like the shorthand for like Chinese people is just like a parade of racism.
And he's going to Africa and his
the Africa sequence was the worst.
His mom is topless tribal woman, and he's like, I don't think I could live here, boobies.
Right, he's staring at her naked breasts in this children's film.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was, and some of it, like Hawaii, was just weird. Like they were saying Hawaii has like a problem getting tourists or something like that. Like that's probably Hawaii's main industries and everything.
Right. And the governor of Hawaii is portrayed as this sort of like backward, almost like bumpkin-y kind of guy. Sexist as well, right? Doesn't he say, the only thing that's barren in Hawaii is my wife's womb or something, and that's why they need to adopt?
I don't think that's sexist. I think that's
it's maybe just distasteful.
To a character,
yeah.
Of whatnot. So eventually we get to the Nelsons,
right? Yeah, the nice white family.
Yeah, with John Ritter, Faith Ford, young Scarlett Johansson. And another kid, a boy.
Not important. Didn't go on to become famous. Yeah.
And North, he's got it made, his perfect life there. And he just can't do it. Even after Winchell doctors a video in a very clumsy sequence where...
to make it look like his parents don't want him back, even though they do.
Right. So the Winchell says, what about this kid, Hugh? You could adopt Hugh. And then the parents say, we don't want Hugh. And North he says, we don't want you, and it's like
very clever, sophisticated humor.
A big stretch, And even after that, North is like, I'm still going home. And then to top it all off, you find out the whole damn movie is just a fucking dream.
Yeah. And that to me is, as a movie that just is insulting in so many ways, that is like the ultimate insult.
Right. That's the fuck you to the audience.
Yes, it really is. That like, okay, we had to trudge through all of this and it was just meaningless.
Yeah. It was the episode of Dallas where Bobby Ewing is just in the shower and it was a bad dream after he was shot. I was probably 5 when that came out, but I remember watching.
There you go. I never watched it, but that's of course probably one of the most famous. Like it was all a dream. Reveals,
which is stupid, and people never like that.
No, and that was done for like practical considerations and stuff. But I feel like even that is way better than this.
Well, we'll have to go back and watch Dallas.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do that in our next episode. And now we will take a break and then we will come back and talk about the legacy of North.
Hey, I'm Danny.
And I'm Jazz.
And together we are the Feature Podcast, where we talk about movies and everyday life.
Be sure to listen to us on Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, and iTunes Podcast Network.
And be sure to follow us on social media at Twitter and Instagram at The Feature Show. And Facebook, it's The Feature Show with /Danny and Jazz.
Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. And in this episode of our 1994 season, we are talking about the biggest flop of the year, Rob Reiner's North. So what is the legacy of North? And we talked about this a little, but I think maybe the biggest legacy of North is the boon for Roger Ebert that it produced. That, like you said, it was a title of one of his books and is one of, if not the most famous movie reviews ever written. And he got a lot more out of this than anyone who was involved in making it.
I think so. And I think those other reviews that you mentioned were harsh, but did not, kind of like capture the zeitgeist as well.
Yeah, right.
And I think of that review in the New York Times about Guy Fieri's restaurant in New York City. And that's almost a direct correlation to this Ebert review. Right?
Yeah.
So other than that, we should look up what Rob Reiner did. He's made a lot of other movies.
Well, that was one of the things, because the one thing I wrote was like, well, it's Rob Reiner's kind of career downturn. But the next movie that Rob Reiner made after North was The American President, which is a huge hit and still one of his most well-regarded movies. After The American President, I think, is when his career started to decline and he made a lot of movies that didn't really go anywhere. So whether North had an effect on that, or it was just like Rob Reiner, I think, is one of those filmmakers who captured so much in such a brief period of time and then was unable to recapture that, as his career went on. But yeah, I don't think we can say that North killed Rob Reiner's career, nor did it kill the career of anyone involved. Elijah Wood, of course, has gone on to a very, varied and strong career as an adult actor.
And he's great.
Yeah, and he is great. He is great. And any of the adult performers, including Dan Aykroyd and Reba McEntire, who maybe are the biggest offenders and terrible performance in this movie, it seems to be something that pretty much everyone involved in it just kind of shrugged off as far as their careers go.
I was just going to say, I was just looking at Rob Reiner's IMDb, and the fact that Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men, North.
Yeah,
wow.
Right.
What a
Well,
transition.
and right before that was Spinal Tap, right? And he made The Sure Thing. I didn't see that.
I haven't seen that either. But yeah, I mean, that run, we're talking about.
That's a run.
Why did people expect this movie to be great? That's why people expected this movie to be great, is because he just had made great movie after great movie after great movie for many years.
I mean, and if you're looking at that filmography, the other big hit comes in 2007, Bucket List, which...
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So he was still making popular movies at that point. Yeah, I mean, I think really the other big legacy is just when people talk about what are the worst movies of all time, this is one that gets thrown in there.
Should not be.
Yeah.
There's way worse movies. This is a bad movie. It's not the worst movie of all time.
I agree. And I don't know, is it even the worst movie of 1994? I mean, I think we'd have to maybe take a longer look. Off the top of my head, I don't remember, but it wouldn't surprise me if it's not. If there are movies that came out in 1994 that were worse than this, or have over time been maligned even further than North has.
Okay, movies from 1994.
Yes, please read a list of every movie that was released in 1994, and we'll edit it down.
No, it's bad.
Yeah,
the Flintstones movie.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else did Car 54, Where Are You? Street Fighter, Exit to Eden, that's another one that's
also starring Dan Aykroyd. Yeah,
right.
And I did notice in looking up the Razzies that Exit to Eden got a lot of Razzie nominations.
The Next Karate Kid, Getting Even with Dad, Richie Rich, so that's a big Macaulay Culkin year of not good stuff.
Yeah, right? I don't know if I've seen any of those movies, but it would not surprise me at all if many of those are worse than North.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm going to say North's place in history is overhyped as one of the worst films as of all time. It's not.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's a bad movie. So do we want to give it a rating out of what should we do it out of?
Well, we're going to rank it out of the 1994 film Monkey Trouble also.
Oh, yeah.
So out of 5 Monkey Troubles.
Yeah.
I give the now. I guess since this is the more Monkey Troubles would be worse, right?
Oh, I don't know. We're really confusing
so-
things here. I think we should just stick with a normal
Okay,
rating
so
system.
the less Monkey Troubles is worse. I will give it. I'll give it 2 Monkey Troubles.
Yeah, I agree with you. 2 out of 5 seems about right. It's not good, but I've seen plenty of worse movies just like in this month, probably.
Did you see Andre, the girl?
The Seal movie? No,
Man.
starring Tina Majorino, right?
Yeah, we do think 1994 is an awesome movie year, but we have just found out there's a lot of crap in 1994.
Yeah, well, that's like I say at the beginning. It's every year is an awesome movie year, and every year is also a terrible movie year, depending on how you look at it. So that is North, and that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. Check us out on social media. Where are we?
We're at Awesome Movie Year on Twitter, Facebook, and the website awesomemovieyear.com, and Instagram. And Jason Harris Comedy at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or J Harris Comedy.
You can find me on Twitter at Signal Bleed, on Facebook at Josh Bell Hates Everything, and at joshbellhateseverything.com. And our great producer, Dave, has his podcast as well.
At Piecing Pod on all of the social medias. You could also join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, a movie discussion group to talk about all these great movies. And I actually have one question for you guys before we wrap this thing up.
Yes, we will go on your podcast and break down the influences of North.
Let's do that. But no, could you see a remake of this movie in 2019, 20, whatever?
They'd have to change a lot. I mean, like you said, the basic premise could work, but literally everything else about it would have to change.
The only, who came to my mind right away as the person who could pull it off, and I didn't love his movie, was Sorry to Bother You, Boots Riley.
Yeah.
Because he's so just out there. Like, I feel like his style of humor could somehow, maybe North could go with Horseman or something like that. So.
You'd have to really take that like satirical, self-aware tone, and because this movie is just so tone deaf and it doesn't understand anything about like who the audience is, how they're going to respond. So it would be a challenge for anyone to.
That would be
this.
actually a good reality series of like, hey, we're taking one of the biggest bombs of all
and
time.
you have to remake it.
Make it better than the original. So
Yeah, pitch that. So what do we have up on our next episode?
Oh, next episode is going to be great, Josh. It
Yes.
is the Palme d'Or winner at Cannes, and maybe the best film of the year, if not any year.
Yes.
That's how good this movie is.
I agree.
Pulp Fiction.
Yes.
Come on.
So,
I'm excited for that.
I'm excited too. Check us out next time for Pulp Fiction. And this has been Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
And all points west.